This podcast contains bones, blood, smut, and swear words.
Before we get into the good shit this week, we wanted to remind you that we've launched a Patreon. For just a few bucks a month, you get extended games, brand new content, access to our notes and murder boards, and much more. So if you would like to be part of sponsoring, for example, Hannah's ever-growing collection of bone earrings, you can head to patreon.com/frontlinefifth or follow the link in the show notes. Okay, now back to that sweet bone zone action.
Bong.
Act 1. Welcome, penitents. Hello and welcome to the Frontline Fifth, a Lock Tomb podcast where brand spanking new novitiates explore the Lock Tomb series for the first time, while a couple of dried-out bone witches cackle over how little they really know. We're currently reading Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, and this week my copy of the book got caught in an incinerator, but we're all totally still alive and not at all mostly dead, so here, dear listener, is everything you need to know about chapters 21 and 22. I'm Hannah, and I'm joined this week by the necromancer who always sends doctors to check on me after my near-death experiences. Thank you so much for that, Marie. Marie, how would you react if you made it through a challenge only to find that the key had already been taken?
I think that I would be having a deep existential crisis and asking myself if I'm extrinsically or intrinsically motivated and what the true meaning of achievement is.
Wow, that was beautiful. That was just so well said. We're also joined today by the most beautiful little baby necromancers who spent their morning poking around in an incinerator. Normal. Brooke and John. Brooke, what would you do if someone half killed you via siphoning and then there was no reward?
I don't think I'm giving you a serious enough answer, but I certainly would demand at least a month off of work. And honestly, that feels very reasonable of me.
So not just like 8 hours of sleep, as
No.
Gideon demands of Harrow
No.
periodically.
Much more.
And John, what's your reaction if you gave up most of your life juice to an empty box in an entropy field?
There are no participation trophies in necromancy.
What a stable person John is. It's horrifying. As for me, I would probably murder literally everyone with a mismatched pair of daggers chiseled from the tibia and fibula of Judas Deuteros. So I'm going to take a couple of deep... What I'm saying here is I know who I would murder first. Then I would spend 2 days very carefully prepping those bones and making daggers, but then I would murder everyone. I'm going to just take a couple of deep, calming breaths, and while I do that aggressively into the microphone so Marie has to edit it out, what did you all think about chapters 21 and 22?
Dude, okay, so in these two chapters, Tamsin Muir is starting to do that thing that mystery writers like to do, which is that they'll give you all these, like, tiny little clues. They're, like, barely contextualized as to, like, the larger meaning. Like, we're not there. We can't see what's happening. We're just kind of getting thoughts about what's going on. But it starts making you paranoid. And I'm suddenly switching teams, like, left and right. Like, this is a classic thing. She's very good at it. You know, going into these chapters, I was fully in on there being murderous ghosts doing all these murders. Not all these murders, just 2. But then Calamities is just like, oh, I think the fourth is more dangerous than pitiful. And suddenly I was like, what? What? What do I need to be worried about here? And then at the end of these 2 chapters, Tamsin Muir, like, made most of our favorite characters, like, absent while we're standing at the incinerator. It was very cruel.
That's a really cool insight that I had not really realized. There's a small number of characters who are there and we can confirm are alive.
Yeah, and so we're sitting there going, who's not here? Who's not? Who do we know is not in the incinerator? And we don't know that it's not Calamities. We do not know that it's not Camilla. We do not know that it's not Dulcinea. We think it's not Harrow, but...
I would just like to shout out Brooke from last week because her conspiracy theories absolutely cooked, and then a bunch were instantly confirmed within 2 chapters. So whatever the necromancer equivalent of a gold star, I think Brooke gets that.
Thank you.
For sure.
A golden bone.
I was going to say a gold-plated coccyx.
Bong.
Didn't we decide that was the worst and the sexiest bone?
Yes.
Okay, that's cool.
So, and maybe this is just a consequence of us only reading a couple chapters at a time, but I found myself just going back and trying to, basically murder board my way through this to try to figure things out. And part of the issue is that the two of you have set us up that, Tamsin is so intentional with her writing. And so I can't tell if they're red herrings or breadcrumbs or, purple
Right?
herrings. I'm sitting here just going through.
Maybe that's important.
Yeah, maybe it's important. Maybe it's not important. There were a bunch of, again, we've been conditioned that there have been so many throwaway lines that were instantly paid off in a couple of chapters later, like so thus far in the book. And so there's a bunch of throwaway lines in these chapters that I noted in particular, and I was like, is that going to pay off in the next couple of chapters? Is that just a throwaway line? Is that just world building? It's inherently a frustrating endeavor, but also it's very, very intriguing.
Nice.
Marie, do you have anything you want to share with the class?
The teens, I still think they're pitiful. They make me so sad, and also fuck the second. That's all.
I would like to just snaps for Marie for both of those. I feel really good about those answers. Okay, it turns out that I, as someone who is aggressively organized and law-abiding, hate authority figures. And so my hatred of the second starts early, but it only grows. All right, what did I write here? I wrote as my first impressions, I eat drawer bread regularly. Which is to say, I am a crackers in bed kind of girl is what I'm trying to say. I think we're learning a lot already about chapters 21 and 22. We're going to have to keep our wits about us and our eyes open for dead bodies and blatant bribery as we present episode 11, Someone's Dead, Act 2, Numinous Dread.
This section of Frontline 5th is safe for anyone who hasn't read past chapter 22 in Gideon the Ninth.
Let's recap. Chapter 21. Skull Watch. Sixth House Skull. Gideon's necromancer overreacted. Only 1 or 2 keys left. There is no law. Chapter 22. Fourth House Skull. Jean-Marie calls in the cavalry. Cremains in the incinerator. Protestolaus goes missing.
Our chapter 21 starts basically the next day after the siphoning challenge, and Gideon wakes up mostly dead.
Which means she's somewhat alive.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now I want an MLT. The Ninth House quarters are once again basically papered with increasingly aggressive notes from Harrow, because that's how Harrow shows love secretly. And Harrow has told her in no uncertain terms to stay put. And she's asked the sixth house to go and check on Gideon. So Camilla shows up at the door to run diagnostics on Gideon, who, by her own admission, feels like she has anemia all the way up to her
Like her
ears.
blood is like fruit juice.
I love that. But I also was like, which kind? Yeah.
Welch's.
It's Kool-Aid. Barely qualifies as fruit juice.
Boy.
LaCroix. I always call it LaCroix.
All right, Jean-Marie.
Oh no, the LaCroix.
Okay. We actually don't have any French listeners, just German listeners, so I think they'll get a kick out of it. Gideon's not great at like sitting still and taking her medicine, so she's being real sassy to Camilla. And Cam is like, my necromancer said you were like going to be basically dead. And so Gideon has to explain to Cam that her necromancer overreacted.
Wait. Is this the first time that Gideon has said, my necromancer?
Yeah, but it did feel a little bit parallelized.
Like just kind of mirroring what Cam had just said.
Cam calls Palamides my necromancer, and so it's like, my necromancer said this. And you're like, well, my necromancer's overreacting.
I don't know. I'm with Marie on this one.
Okay.
And either way, what is really adorable is that both Cam and Gideon are like, yeah, we understand necromancers overreacting. They're like, that's par for the fucking course. Basically, Gideon is like mostly fine. She's, not great. Her blood is fruit juice, but she's not in a coma, which Palamides basically said she should be. I think this is really interesting. So Gideon asks Cam here why they didn't just do the siphoning trial. And Cam explains that they were worried that it would cause permanent brain damage to Camilla, which is really interesting. I mean, we are not seeing any obvious signs of brain damage in Gideon, but it doesn't mean they're not there, right?
How would you tell? I'm so sorry, Gideon. I'm so sorry.
She seems perfectly fine.
It does explain a little bit about like the eighth house, right? I mean, that necromancer seems like polite, but mostly quiet. Colum Asht is like a pretty minimal character, and perhaps that's because he doesn't have a lot of executive function after being siphoned all the time.
Yeah.
Hard to tell. So I also I think this is the first time that they actually tell us that the 8th house breeds cavaliers to be genetic matches for their necromancers so that it'll be like a smooth siphoning battery.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, that's gross.
Treating people like things, it's really horrifying.
Isn't the uncle younger than the nephew? So
That's correct.
who's being bred for who?
So this actually shows up in like the cohort files, I think, that they bred a bunch of brothers in preparation for Silas to come out and then picked the one that worked best once Silas was born.
Fucking yuck.
Yes.
That's gross.
Yeah, but it's not gross enough to stop them from getting lunch. So off they go to the
It's how
cafeteria.
people treat women in like ancient arranged marriage times.
Very yes, actually.
Okay.
It's how they will treat women moving forward in the future. This is, Kate, just like a really brief aside, Mad Max Fury Road, phenomenal movie. And I actually really think that people miss one of the absolute core concepts of it, which is that women are not things and that treating them as things is a fundamental like horror. That's like a core concept. Anyway,
No, you've
moving
sold
right
me
along.
on Mad Max Fury Road. I haven't seen it.
Put it on the Patreon.
All right, done. It's happening. I thought it was really funny that Harrow like did leave Gideon bread in a drawer, which they don't eat.
No, she does. It's the first thing she eats. She like washes her face. She laps at the tap. Like you can the way she describes her, like turning her head to like lap at the stream of water coming out of the sink. Fucking love that.
Lapping at a tap like an animal. Man, I missed the drawer bread. I can't believe that was the highlight of the chapter.
She puts it down fast.
All right, so they walk into the cafeteria where they get to see some like fun drama, right? Corona Beth is there begging Teacher for a key to the hatch. And Teacher is just like, it's literally not an option. And Corona's like, it's not fair, Ianthe has one. And so Teacher has to be like, no, Naburius has one. It belongs to the Cavalier, and he's your Cavalier too. The 3rd house gets one fucking key. You don't get another key. It's cute because Palamides, who is like adorable and noble and chivalrous. Okay, in my opinion, Palamides is like the guy in every 90s teen rom-com who like takes off his glasses and suddenly it's like, oh, he's so beautiful. Now he's the hottest one.
I love that
I love
description
that.
of him. Because
here for
also he's
that.
really tall.
He's tall. He has stunning eyes. Like, yeah.
Okay, but like what we've gotten up into this point for whatever reason, like, is that he's kind of disheveled. Like he's got like
Rumpled professor.
yeah, like I don't get hot dude bro vibes.
No, but that's why you need a makeover montage.
He needs a makeover.
Makeover montage, and then suddenly he's like
Awesome.
should we remake Clueless, but it's with Palamides?
Cute.
Anyway. So basically Palamides is like, it's okay, Corona, I happily will take you down to the facility anytime. And so the second jump in, nobody asked them, by the way, but they think that Palamides should not be collaborating with other houses. So Corona Beth starts offering bribes. Any thoughts on the bribes that she offers?
The 3rd house will go on its knees for the 6th house. And you're like, okay,
That's the
Corona.
The first offer is the 3rd house will go down on its knees for the 6th house.
That's bad negotiating.
But actually, see, here's the thing, though. She knows that's like not what, the 6th house wants. So she offers like cohort prizes and money. And the last thing she offers him, which I think is hilarious, is research
Yes,
materials.
I was like, oh,
And I
that
was
would
like,
work.
Know your audience. Yeah.
In case anybody wants to know, I am 6th house.
You're like, you can bribe me anytime with research materials.
Yes, please.
Here are several subscriptions to journals.
Oh, for real. Basically, Corona's not just asking for the hatch key, though. What she wants is help getting access to all the keys that her sister has. The second, nobody asked, say they don't stand for bribery. At which point, Palamity stops the whole show and explains that he cannot help Corona Beth get same keys as Ianthe because each key is unique.
Well done, Brooke.
So good.
Thank you.
Actually, what are your thoughts at this moment? Because when I read this the first time, I did not clock this. I was like, what the actual fuck? I definitely assumed it was like some sort of video game thing with regenerating keys, right?
Yeah, no, I would like to say that even though I was like, oh, there's going to be like a key per house, I didn't like still know whether or not there was regeneration or not.
So how do you feel about there being just one key per trial?
Now we're back in more of a Hunger Games, limited resources situation where,
Back to Hunger Games.
yeah,
100%. Because this is like, and I would like to point out that Corona Beth takes this the other direction and says immediately, Well, obviously, that means that this is a communal trial, that literally we cannot accomplish this without the information that everyone has, and we should
she'd
be
be
working
saying
together.
something different if she had a key.
Oh, you think
Yeah.
so?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yep.
That's who she
I
is.
love a collaborative trial. You're right, Corona Beth might not be. It's just me doing that in the corner being like, you guys, it's not that hard. We just collaborate.
I also think it was interesting that Palamedes was like, oh, like, I'm not the first to realize this. Like, that's the reason the 8th challenged the 7th. Like, that to me was a surprise.
I love when he looks at everybody in the room and is like, come on,
You guys are all you guys are all
dumbasses.
dumbasses.
Like, you surely you understood this. And everybody's like,
No. And so, I mean, at this point, everybody starts fucking freaking out. You know, like, oh, this literally means that people could just be sniping keys by bribery and murder and coercion. And teacher says,
Yep.
there is no law. There is no law. There's one rule. The rule is you don't go through doors without permission. Keys indicate permission, and that's the end of the rules. And the second are like, nah, but what about all of the actual laws? And teacher's like, what do you not understand about the fact that we are in God's house? Special place, different place.
and this is like one of the only times where teacher has ever been anything other than just like kindly old man who loves gossip. Like, this is the only time he's been slightly salty, where he's like, I don't know where you're getting this idea, stupid second house.
Why do you think you're in charge? Like,
Just more, I love that teacher is on the same wavelength as Hannah and I as fuck the second.
basically, at this point, of course, everybody knows that there's no extra keys, and so now you need to take them where you can get them. And that's maybe some of the challenges downstairs actually have keys left over, but there's also kind of weaker targets, and one of those is the corpses of Abigail Pent and Magnus Quinn. So basically, everybody goes to the walk-in freezer.
I love that the frickin' walk-in freezer for the food is literally one door away from the morgue.
Yes.
That's just efficient
Yes.
planning. You only have to insulate one big room.
No, it's not efficient planning. I mean,
Nope,
you
that's
can
brilliant.
put the entrance in a different place.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to have one doorway leading to the next. Interconnected doors with the morgue is not okay. There needs to be some separation.
And everything's transported by skeletons. Do you think the skeletons are washing their hands? Probably not.
Man, I really didn't think about that. But to be fair, they're like very clean skeletons. No rotting flesh, just bones. So at that point, it's just like a calcium robot.
Right, but fomites.
I also think we should not throw the skeletons under the bus here. For all we know, they're rubbing anti-bac gel
true.
all over
That's
their
true.
hands
That's
every
true.
25 minutes. We don't know.
We have evidence that maybe they are because nobody has gotten sick.
At the same time, I do think in general, you should not have the order of, you shouldn't go into a morgue and then into the place where the food is without disinfecting between the two. I would appreciate some sort of little airlock there.
Yep.
The point is, everybody's looking for the keys on Abigail and Magnus, and the second don't find them. And actually, even Palamedes Sextus, with his psychometry, can't find any keys on the corpses.
Wait, we get a fun throwaway line, which is that Thanergy can stick to things that aren't alive, which is interesting.
Tell me more, John.
It would explain why there's the souls of 10,000 million screaming ghosts downstairs if lots of things happened.
Oh.
Now there's just energy around. And that'll feed into a conspiracy theory I'm going to have at the end of the episode here.
excellent.
But yeah, generally, that felt like a throwaway line that's really going to pay off later, where it's like, yes, inanimate objects, if there's sufficient death energy around, can pick it up. And so that could be a problem. So I don't know. That felt like breadcrumbs.
Definitely. I think it's super interesting. Marie, you have a comment in
Oh.
here. Would you like to share?
Calamity is talking about the keys, and everybody searching for the keys says the feces starts hitting the fan now. And I was like, wait, where does that idiom come from? Which led me to a JSTOR article about idioms.
Okay.
Where essentially they just say nobody really knows where it comes from, but it might come from a very specific joke where there's a dude in a bar and he really has to go. And he goes upstairs, but he can't find a bathroom. He just finds a hole. And so he craps in the hole, and then he comes back downstairs, and like the entire bar is cleared out, and like the bartender is hovering, like cowering behind the bar. And he's like, where'd everybody go? And the bartender says, well, where were you when shit started hitting the fan?
Oh my God.
Feels like quite the reach, but I like the story anyway.
So as they're examining the bodies, they actually do have a little conversation that I think is interesting about Keyes. They talk about Dulcinea. And they also mention, and I think this is like probably something we should bring up, that apparently Magnus and Abigail's bodies contained tiny bone fragments from different osseous sources. And Pal is about to tell us what this means when they get basically interrupted and everybody goes home.
Strike 3 on the, but we'll never know what they were going to say because interruption.
It's a convenient plot device, okay, Brooke? Okay?
Very convenient.
What do you think about this? Like, does this mean, like, no ghosts? Like, this plus Keyes means no ghosts?
Honestly, it could mean that they were in the thing, they got beat up in the by the bone storm creation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That they could have been in the winnowing chamber. I buy that.
I don't really know what the whole what his definition of homogenous is. Are we talking, is this powder? Bone powder of a whole bunch of different sources that have been blended up? Or are we talking like a whole bunch of different kinds of bones smacking people in different areas and mixing it up there? I don't know.
Yeah, did they get jumped by a gang of skeletons from all different sources? Yeah, it's
Gangbanged to death by skeletons.
Yep.
It wouldn't be the first time.
Yep. These are what we have to pull on from, so not super definitive.
Okay.
Fair enough. All right, so Gideon takes a spa night, and the following morning, she does. I also love that she takes a bath, and then she's like, this cannot possibly be getting me clean. And so also takes a Sonic.
To be fair, a lot of people believe that, especially the way she was describing her water.
Yeah, I agree too. I'm like, I don't think you were that clean. Also, I do think it's very funny that we talked about this at the very beginning, Brooke, where you were like, how do they wash their hair if they don't take showers or baths? And the way she's describing her hair afterwards, that she's like, it won't stick down. And I'm like, oh my God, her hair was
filled with grease.
Anti-bac gel may sanitize you, but it is not cleaning your hair.
I would like to remind everyone that for a very long time in the mid-aughts, it was very trendy for your hair to just be spikes of fucking gel. So maybe Gideon's super cool and not at all just disgusting. So Gideon goes out into Canaan House feeling like rested and refreshed and joyous.
and not dead.
And not dead. 3
Shockingly.
of those 4 things will not last long. She'll still be alive. Don't you worry, dear listener. Basically, right away, she's accosted by Isaac Teteris, who's the necromancer of the 4th house, who we haven't really interacted with very much. And Isaac's been sent by Jean-Marie because someone's dead.
This is super weird because the necromancer got sent to do something by the cavalier.
Oh, good point.
I think it just points out that those two are codependent in a very specific way of necros and calves, that maybe because they've been together for since they were so young, they were paired up very young, and they don't have any of the maturity to grow into what are these roles supposed to be.
Yeah, 14-year-old girls are going to be more mature than a 14-year-old boy at the same time frame, so it might just be
And it's possible, because I feel like one of them is described as being 13, so it's possible that Isaac actually is younger.
and then emotionally much younger.
Yeah.
But either way, I think it's actually a really good insight, because part of what I think is interesting about this book is the exploration of different formats of partnership and different formats of connection and love. And it's clear that the necromancer-cavalier relationship is not universally identical. And I think you're totally right. Jean-Marie definitely wears the cloak in this combo. Jean-Marie basically sent Isaac to get specifically Gideon and Coronabeth. That's specifically because they were the ones that Magnus liked, which is so freaking cute. Unfortunately, of course, they're being, hailed because someone is dead. And by the time they get back to Surchatur, they actually picked up some strays, so they're being trailed at this point by Nabirius, Marta, and Column.
Which means that, it's all calves.
Except for Isaac and Corona. And Jean-Marie is pacing back and forth in front of the incinerator. And actually, both Jean-Marie and Isaac just look so freaking just freaked out and tragic. They look like they haven't slept in days. They're buzzing with anxiety. It's deeply sad.
They're covered in ashes because they've been digging through the incinerator. Gross.
Yeah.
Blood.
It's so sad. And her rapier's out. She's ready for battle. She's scared. And so Jean-Marie opens the grate and shows everyone ashes.
Well, greasy ashes.
Okay, to be fair, greasy ashes, right? But at the end of the day, there's ashes inside an incinerator. And so Jean and Isaac are these are clearly fresh human cremains, and everybody else is kind of you're a child. Do we believe you?
Could be something, could be nothing, to be determined, I think is kind of how I'm playing it out. Could be a false trail, could be, until we've accounted for everyone, we won't know, right? Like we've only got there were 16 of them, 2 of them are dead, we're down to 14, so like basically only a third of them are present here. So we don't know.
That's essentially exactly what Babs says, is like, if somebody doesn't show up, then I guess you were right.
Yeah, although Babs is also a dick about it. He's immediately like, who are these idiot children? You made me get out of the swimming pool. Like, go fuck yourself. He's the worst.
My hair sucks.
Yeah, let's not discount the fact that Gideon is just like actively like hubba hubba panting after Corona this entire chapter because she's dripping wet out of the pool.
I like Corona Beth telling Nibirius, shut your mouth and fix your hair.
Yes.
That is the greatest line. I also I wanted to say, I really like and respect Corona, and actually Column doesn't get a lot of play, but I like and respect Column as well. And I weirdly decided that I would totally watch a sitcom that's just the two of them living in an apartment in New York.
That would be very funny, actually.
Anyway, Corona, like when she steps in, she takes charge, and she takes charge with a lot of empathy, but without any pity. She treats Saoirse as a knight, as a warrior, and treats them with military as like, rapier away, tell us what you found. And I think it actually really helps. And then Column, I'm so proud of him. He's like, they're sitting there being like, well, maybe the skeletons were burning something weird or some like extra animals that had gone rotten or whatever that we can't eat. And Column is like, we could ask someone with our words.
Yeah, he's like the one sane character in every like horror movie or rom-com where it's just like, why don't we just communicate? This would solve so many problems.
Everyone sort of just like trickles away as if there hasn't been an accusation of murder and potentially dismemberment and burning, because there's more important things to think about. The 8th is going to duel the 7th, so everybody's really excited about that.
Nibirius is very excited about that.
God, what a bro.
At the end, only Corona and Gideon are left behind.
Isaac is telling them that he thinks he's being stalked. He's like, I see things like out of the corner of my eye at nighttime. I feel like there's somebody standing outside my door. That feels pretty otherworldly.
And it could go either way, right? Like, you could totally imagine that this person whose parental figures have just been like horribly killed would be imagining things. Or alternatively, we also know that people were horribly killed here, so it could just be real.
Dun dun dun.
Everybody can kind of just feel this numinous dread seeping into Canaan House. So it's time for some
SAT word.
Numinous, having a strong religious or spiritual quality, indicating or suggesting the presence of a divinity.
but a dreadful divinity.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I love the idea of like God's watching and you're like, you know what? The 4th was right. The numinous dread was right, because that afternoon, the 7th do not show up for their duel with the 8th. And everyone kind of just goes on a mission searching through all of Canaan House looking for them. And ultimately, Cam and Gideon find Dulcinea slumped in the rain, mostly dead.
Somewhat alive.
And she's out there on the terrace alone, like dying of exposure, because Protesilaus went away and never came back. That about wraps it up for chapters 21 and 22. I'm headed off to poke everyone in Canaan House with a stick to make sure that they are still alive. But first, it's time for that part of Frontline 5th where we play a game. Interstitial, a walking ninth house cliche. Well, congratulations, aspiring lictors! There aren't many keys left in Canaan House, so we must be kind of close to graduation. But luckily, there's still time for some fun here at the tail end of spring semester, which is why this week we're playing Bone High, Yearbook Edition. So in this game, we have asked our hosts to reimagine Gideon the Ninth as a teen drama. It's really not hard to do. And we're going to ask them to describe all the high school personas. I do want to give a quick shout out here to Brooke, who came up with this game, and then I took it way too far. Okay, let's start with our hero, Gideon the Ninth. Marie, what is Gideon's yearbook superlative?
Most likely to die on the front line.
Hot.
But sexy, gorgeous.
Hot. Gorgeous.
Exactly. Brooke, what senior prank does Gideon pull?
God, it's got to be something that's just like, it's good. It is good. It is victimless. It is not too much work. I think it's something along the lines of like changing every admin's computer background and screensaver to like some K-pop band, or going into the library and like mixing up all of the romance books in the historical section and the sci-fi and the science section.
I love that.
Like something completely kind and good. No true victims.
That's very cute. John, what is Gideon's high school clique?
At the risk of throwing out some stereotypes here, I'm assuming that she would play rugby.
Absolutely.
Oh, she definitely plays rugby.
And then also like is a like Warped Tour and Warped Tour adjacent, like aficionado, just like definitely not like quite emo or goth, but just like running in those circles. Like is well liked by all of the like alternative music groups.
I love it. She's got that punk edge. So I'm going to tell you how Gideon asks someone out to prom. And what I wrote here initially, I've changed my mind on. So I'm going to give you two. Here is basically what Gideon wants to do is to ask Dulcinea to prom. And if she did ask Dulcinea to prom, what she would do is stick a note on the end of a piece of yarn that was all winded up. And then over the course of like 12 days, as she sat there holding the ball of yarn while Dulcinea knitted, eventually the note would get to her and it would say something like, "Do you want to go to prom with me? Check yes or no."
I love it so much.
So my alternative is that Gideon thinks about doing that and is like, no, I could never.
Yeah.
And instead, just in the middle of a random practice duel with any other cavalier is like, "Do you want her to go to prom?"
That is actually how she does it. She dreams
Yes.
about
Right, exactly.
this method, and what she
That's
actually
right.
does is just be like, "So, prom?"
Yeah. And so she and like Marta Dias end up going to prom really awkwardly and not talking the entire
Yes,
time.
that is actually how it happens.
Well, gosh, that was just almost as much fun as real puberty. So let's do it again. Okay, this time, how about Nibirius' turn? Brooke, what's Nibirius's yearbook superlative?
I'm giving him best hair because I don't think anybody likes him enough to like give him credit for like being good looking overall.
Best hair is mwah. Okay, John, what is Nibirius's senior prank?
See, I'm picturing him as like similar with the great hair. He's captain of the lacrosse team or the hockey team or something. And so his senior prank is definitely forking the football field or something along those lines.
What does that mean?
Just where you like take like thousands of plastic forks and just stick them in the ground because they mess up lawnmowers.
Oh my God.
So I feel like he's definitely forking his rival sports teams or like messing with their facilities in some way.
Yeah.
And Nibirius is definitely in the clique of just rich kids. They're not the cool kids, they're just the rich kids. Yeah. But they do get to go to every party because they are the rich kids. Marie, what does a Nibirius promposal look like? And who does he ask?
I mean, obviously he asks Corona Beth because they both have the best hair. And she'll look great as his date, and that's all he cares about. And like they're close enough that he's pretty sure like she'll just have to say yes because their parents will just make her, both sides will just be like, you have to go with Nibirius. So it's like a guaranteed. But he does it at the end of a duel that he's just won. So that like basically he wins a duel against somebody and then he's like makes her promposal all about him.
That tracks.
Yep, I love that. That's perfect. Let's do one for Palamity Sextus. John, what do you think Pal's yearbook superlative is?
I mean, he's the greatest necromancer of the generation, right? So it's got to be most likely to succeed or most likely to cure cancer or something along those lines, right? It's something about how immensely successful he's going to be.
There we go.
Dead on. I think his senior prank would be complicated. My initial senior prank was along the lines that Brooke had. He like thinks about switching books in the library, and then he's like, "Oh no!" But then people wouldn't be able to find things. So
I literally thought the exact same thing, and I was like, "Oh, he's screwing with the Dewey Decimal System in the library or something." Like that's his senior prank.
Yeah, I think he like can't bring himself to do that. So instead he does something either like way too big or way too small, like leaving like a cow carcass in the middle of somewhere for like someone to find, or alternatively like switching the letters just occasionally on like various signs that have individual letters posted up so that it's slightly misspelled. Like he does not have like the correct prank level.
I really like this idea of a prank, and I feel like this maybe is suitable for Calamities, of somebody deciding to do a senior mural, and they just want to write the digits of pi across like an entire wall, but then as a prank, they only do 3.14 correct, and then everything after it is completely incorrect.
I love that. Camilla does that prank, and it drives Palamides insane. Like, it's like...
Because it's like a prank that's annoying to the administration because they have to repaint the wall, but it's a prank that is specifically annoying to the one pedant who knows all of the decimals of pi.
more digits of pi.
I love it so much. Marie, who is Palamides hanging out with?
He's only ever hanging out with Cam, but he's also definitely the kid who's always in the teacher's classrooms, like after school, doing extra work just because he wants to, and he's curious about something. And so in that way, he's every single teacher's class pet, but in like obviously the teachers love Palamides, not in like he's an obnoxious suck up.
I think that's perfect. And Brooke, who is Pal asking to prom, and how does he do it?
He wants to invite Dulcinea. I think he wants to invite Dulcinea, but he has no idea how to do it. And by the time he's figured out something, she's already taken, obviously. So in reality, he's asking Cam, and we're gonna say it's asking Cam, but in reality, all he did was he checked that she wasn't otherwise busy that night because they only ever hang out together, and there was really never any doubt that she would be going with him.
He totally sent her a Google invite.
See, I was picturing this as him forgetting about it until the last minute, and then being like asking Cam, and Cam's like, I don't know, maybe I can make it, and she's like already sitting outside his house in a full dress, like ready to go.
Oh my god,
That's amazing.
Yep.
With his
That is
tux
perfect.
ready to go.
Exactly
Yeah.
right.
The tux is in a dry
She
cleaning
brought him
bag.
the tux.
Yeah, exactly.
God, this was also good. All right, we're going to do one more. Last one, Judith Deuteros.
Yeah.
And I think it's clear that Judith's yearbook superlative is most likely to be murdered. I'm so sorry.
Or do
to
some
everyone.
murdering, honestly.
First of all,
Anyone.
Judith is one of my favorite stories, like one of my favorite like Bible stories. There are not a lot of good ones. I think Judith is an interesting one. I don't hate the name Judith, so just like no shade to our Judiths out there, but oh my God, I hate the second house
What am
so
I supposed
much.
to know about the Judith Bible story?
Basically, she wants to be involved with her brother's revolution. It's the Maccabees. It's the Hanukkah story. And they're like, no, you're a girl. And so she sneaks down to the encampment of the fellow officers and like makes a whole picnic basket and seduces the guard and seduces the main general and brings back his head in the basket. Yeah. And I'm like, yes, go hard.
It's the painting Judith with the head of Holofernes.
Yes. But also like, so Judith Deuteros, just isn't that person. She's a strong military person, but she would never sneak into an enemy camp because it's not what is correct and done. Anyway, so most likely to be murdered. That was a long way to go for that. Marie, what does Judith do as a prank?
She does not have a pranking bone in her body, so she does not do any pranks. In fact, she ruins everyone else's pranks by figuring out about them ahead of time and then ratting out the perpetrators to the principal because she sucks.
Fucking narcs. Brooke, who makes up Judith's high school crew?
Her crew is like the not super smart goody two shoes kids. And like I'm imagining them as like a gang of juvenile Karens who believe that they deserve everything because someone else said so.
I was also going to throw out the ROTC, the junior ROTC for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yes. Cohort shit. Absolutely.
Okay, John, who is Judith asking to prom, and what is the most spectacular Judith Deuteros promposal?
All right. So Judith is rolling up to the parking lot in her brand new Dodge Challenger or just probably a Dodge Challenger because she just got her military signing bonus because she's shipping out right after she graduates from high school. So she's rolling up in the stereotypical new military car, which is a Dodge Challenger. And not only is it a promposal, it's an actual proposal because they're getting married before she ships out for military stuff. So
yes.
And they've known each other for 6 months, and that's how that's going down.
Yeah.
Is it anyone particular in the cast that she's asking?
Honestly, I don't know.
No, nobody likes her.
It's someone back home on the second, right?
Yes.
Like
Somebody
we're rolling
who
up in a
values her
shittily
role.
financed Dodge Challenger, and
that was good.
we're proposing.
That's amazing.
Marie, do you have thoughts about that? You're making faces.
No, it's exactly right.
This was too real for
Yeah.
Marie. Oh man, the bell just rang, which means it's time to move on. Wow, do we know the class of 12,025 well or what? And now we have to head off to our next class, which is, of course, rampant speculation. Act 3. Your vow of silence is conveniently variable. Now is the time when we ask our mostly alive, I double-checked, aspiring lictors to give us their conspiracy theories. So Brooke and John, what the fuck is happening?
So Palamides has got me sniffing around the twins. I kind of think that it's pretty suspicious that, like, the fourth house was just very coincidentally taking a look in the incinerator for bodies and happened to find one. That's a big coincidence. Like, so now I'm thinking that this might be some sort of a poor cover-up for, like, a big mental breakdown that led them to killing Protesilaus or whoever else is missing. And then they needed to find a way to eliminate any evidence because, like, Palamides is a super spy. And they needed to pin it on some, like, nebulous other, like, oh, I'm seeing people out of the corners of my eyes, ghosts. They're very disheveled. They could have easily been the people, like, chopping up bodies and shoving them into the incinerator. I don't know. Mental breakdown?
It is creepy to be checking incinerators.
And then finding a dead body, like, in an incinerator. Like, what? Too big of a coincidence. Okay. But, John, I know you've been doing some cooking. I want to know what you have.
Again, I just want to give Brooke her flowers for her conspiracies last week, which were just amazing, and led to some of mine as well. So I am now of the opinion that Cannon House is sitting either on a ley line, basically the necromancer equivalent of a ley line, or it's kind of where they first figured out how to break the plane. Like, going back to my theory about this, where they discovered how necromancy works, I think it's either like a ley line or it sits on top of the river Styx. Like, basically that's why everything's always wet, is that it overlaps the spirit world in a place where the river Styx and or the spirit world is very close to reality. And they were able to break that open by doing creating the tens of thousands of ghosts. Like, all of that thanergy was used to break the barriers between the realms. And that's why this place is just like a nexus of just spirit energy and kind of, sad spirits and everything else. A bunch of very horrible things happened here, and that's what happened. There might have been a flood involved. I feel like with all the biblical references, maybe the river Styx broke through and flooded the earth, and that was the apocalypse that they had.
Whoa. Yeah, no, interesting. Okay, I'm loving this reference to river Styx. I think that is super cool. I do want to point out that, like, there's a lot of weird references to puddles of, like, light and puddles, like, referring to light being cast as similar to water in these chapters for whatever reason. I do think that a lot of the warped doors that I was like, oh, there was, like, the tides rose and swamped this house at some point. I think it's better explained by the rain coming through the holy ceiling. But there's a lot of unnecessary water features, and I'm loving the idea that this is, like, some, like, allusion to river Styx being, like, in a similar plane of existence. That's super cool.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if they caused the apocalypse or they were trying to stop the apocalypse, right? Like, is this the place where they accidentally let the river Styx through and that's what, like, caused the, like, end times? Or the end times was coming and this is where they tried to figure out necromancy to stop it or contain it or something along those lines. But I feel like there's definitely a flood as part of that.
So definitely apocalyptic moment then.
Yes. And then my other thing is I think we have confirmation, at least in my mind, that part of becoming a lictor is like two souls, one body, but it's definitely like taking over the body, which is why Pal doesn't want to do it, because it's really just like subjugating your cavalier in a lot of ways. I think that's why he doesn't want to do it. It's just like a lot of suffering and a lot of just...
What do you mean he doesn't want to do it?
Well, it's not, because it just from like the way that he talks in this chapter, it seems like he's just like, God help us all if we actually have to go through with this process. And he doesn't want to do the soul siphoning, which seems to be part of at least the process of becoming a lictor. So, like, I think he's figured it out that that's the process, is that you basically put two souls into one body, and he doesn't want to do that because it probably would cause a lot of harm and or trauma to his cavalier, or at least he's going to be hesitant about it. And that just launches into so many other conspiracy theories about, like, how do you keep that going? And we still don't really know how the, like, taking over of the body works. Like, we got obviously like the little bit with Harrow and Gideon, but yeah, we're so breadcrumbs, so many breadcrumbs, but
we need a murder board.
This is completely fascinating. I'm having just the best time listening to both of your theories and then talking about you behind your back. I guess we'll see if any of that actually happens next time when John and Brooke jump back in with some fancy footwork as shit gets political in Gideon the Ninth chapters 23, 24, and 25. That is right, dearest penitents of the Locked Tomb. You get 3 whole chapters next week because I'm still doing penance for the time I made John read just 1 chapter back on episode 6.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate you. And if you, dear listener, are like Brooke and me, reading along for the first time, make sure you find our reading calendar on our website, frontline5th.podbean.com, or follow us on Instagram or TikTok, which are both linked in the show notes. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends and give us a 5-star rating anywhere you can. And if you didn't like it, feel free to lie. If you're dying for more, cool extra content like movie reviews, tarot readings, extended games by subscribing to our Patreon at patreon.com/frontline5th. Now head off to sleep, my baby necros. Mommy and Daddy have some deep spoilers to discuss.
Get in, losers. We're going speculating.
Act 4. This conversation is all I've ever dreamed about.
This portion of the podcast is 98% spoilers and like 2% snickering. It might be more snickering.
Seriously, we will spoil anything and everything in the series up through Nona the Ninth. If that's not what you want, turn back now. We need to talk about what John just said.
Yeah, he's
And
the
there
one
was a
who
lot.
picked up that Palamides has it figured out, which I didn't clock that the first 500 times that I've read this book. I don't clock that he has it figured out until he tells Harrow at the end, where they start talking about their theories. Like when he and Harrow start talking about it, then you're like, oh, he thinks he's got it figured out. And then like later on, he very much has it figured out and is like, there's no way I'm fucking doing that. You know, when he goes in and like tells Ianthe, like, what have you done? You didn't actually do it, did you?
Right. He actually figures it out. And so, like, we know I think it even may be in the next chapter, that he figures out that he thinks it's a mega theorem. And Harrow's idea is that it's like a secret locked door that they're going to get to. And to be honest, I think there is more to Canaan House than meets the eye. So actually, locked doors probably exist. But the point of the Lictor thing is this mega theorem. So yeah, I think Palamides figures it out and figures out, like John said, both that it is a merging of 2 people, but also that it is a subservient merging. It is not 2 equal partners on equal footing. The way the Lictor process works, it is about the dissolution of the Cavalier. That was amazing to hear John say. That was incredible. I also thought it was like so wild that he's decided that this is a magical place and that it may actually be on the River Styx, because that's basically our spoiler theory, is that Canaan House is in the river.
Yeah, none of us have gotten there yet, other than it seems like probably at the end of Nona when Harrow is walking towards the tower. The tower seems like very clearly to me like the tower is Canaan House in the river.
That I really, really like. And it would explain the like extensiveness of it. If you have this like infinite tower that stretches up through and past the river, there's different kind of sections of it. The other thing that I think is really, really interesting is, I mean, part of his thing is maybe this was always a magic place such that necromancy could happen.
Right. Maybe. We don't know that.
Right. But I think it's interesting. And I wonder if we will ever actually get any like information on how necromancy started in the first place. Jod is unique, right? Like there are a lot of people at that facility. It's not like Mercy manifests powers while she's there, or Augustine, right? So I think it is interesting. The other thing that I wanted to hit that John said, and I was like, you are just brilliant. I'm so proud of you right now. He said that maybe the 10,000 million or whatever, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but the 10 billion deaths allowed them to like break open access to necromancy. And the answer is sort of, right? The 10 billion deaths did allow Jod to kill the earth, creating the first thanergetic system, which is ultimately the beginning of a more broadly accessible necromancy. And the idea that you can use that thanergetic bursts for power is a key theme throughout all these books, that death is like a space where energy gets released in a really powerful and potent way.
Well, and it also is kind of wondering if the powers that the earth was trying to give him were not supposed to be necromantic powers, but his own way of starting to use the power that earth was giving him subverted it and flipped it.
Yeah.
Like him being able to grow stuff, him being able to heal and all of those things, but you didn't necessarily have the energy first. Or maybe it's one of these things where because the earth was dying, that's why it is death magic.
Right. I mean, and it can be a combination of themes, but it certainly is, you know, it is telling that his first real act as God is destruction. Mm-hmm. It's not rejuvenation, like, because ostensibly he could use that power to heal the earth or to, you know, whatever. His first act is to just kill everyone and then to kill the planet, basically. He does start the apocalypse. He is responsible for that. Anyway, so like just kudos to John this week, and he will not be able to get those kudos until literally like the end of Nona.
Yep.
But I'm so impressed with him this week. Actually, speaking of Jod being unique, I do want to like touch on something that I've been thinking about still. So is it possible that Gideon is special because of her heritage?
I feel like we keep coming back to this.
I've touched on it before, and we've like gone back and forth about whether it's nothing. I do think it's interesting that she survived the poisoning that the ninth house did to kill all of the children. It is weird that she was a couple of cots over from the like vent where they were pumping through organophosphates and she didn't die. And additionally, Pal, who we know is frankly the smart one, says that she should have been a corpse. And at the very least, she should have been in a coma after this siphoning challenge. And instead, like, she doesn't feel good.
She's fine.
She is upright, walking, talking. She could fight a duel right now. It is a little bit weird. And so you could read this either as Harrow being exceptional, that like Harrow is a much more powerful necromancer than she should be and therefore was able to do this without as much damage to Gideon, or Gideon is actually special.
I think it has to be that Gideon's special simply for the fact that she lived when she was not supposed to, when she was a literal infant. Like, I think that is the biggest thing for it. And then that also gives you, like the siphoning could be like a little, like maybe Harrow is better than Palamides thinks she is, or that she's better than Palamides at this.
But it wouldn't account for the whole thing.
I just had a thought while you were talking about what if it ends up that Gideon does have access to a type of magic, right? Like, because it's described that John's magic is not the same as everybody else's. So what if it turns out that Gideon's not a necromancer?
But that Gideon is a wizard. She's got some special...
You're a wizard, Gideon.
Sorry, Kate, speaking of that, I had a moment... Okay, so there's like a really obvious moment here when Isaac is like, Corona, you're the only other necromancer here. Can't you tell they're fresh remains? And Corona's like silent.
There's another one where like everybody's saying like, well, of course necromancers know this. And Corona's like side eye. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I literally thought in my head, like, you're not a wizard, Corona Beth. Like the opposite.
You're not a wizard.
And I love the idea of starting with the no, you're not. You don't get to go to special school. You suck. Although she doesn't suck. She's amazing. You know, you get it. I have a truly dumb query for you. Do you think that Cytherea actually laid out in the rain that entire time? Or was she just like waiting under an umbrella, jumping up and down, waiting for someone to come find her and then sprawling so that she looked like she was like out in the rain the whole time?
I think she's lived for 10,000 years and she was like, oh yeah, this is a new experience that I haven't had for like 4,000 or 5,000. And she's just going for it.
That's pretty funny.
That's my read.
In my heart of hearts, I feel like she's convinced that she is much more in control of everything than she actually is. And so I feel like she's like a meticulous planner and would be more likely to like time it out perfectly. But I like the version that she's like, I don't give a shit. It's rain.
Yeah. Like, I've been literally dying for 10,000 years. The rain is not going to do anything. This is a new and interesting experience. Although I also think that she probably is deliberately haunting and terrorizing the fourth. And I think it's just because she's a sadistic bitch.
Sorry, it's horrifying. It's truly... God, the fourth are so tragic. And this is one of the few places where I kind of like have a little bit of an eye roll with Tamsin Muir, is Sextus being like, I wonder how dangerous they are, which I think is kind of, as Brooke said at the beginning, a classic mystery writer thing where it's just explicitly just trying to make us be like, oh no, it's this person, it's that person, who is it? Because the fourth are just objectively the fucking saddest. They are broken. They are so traumatized that they are at the edge of their brains. Like they are, There would be no coming back from this.
I feel the same thing about that with like, eye roll, Tamsin. And also, that's consistent with Pal.
How so?
Of being like, I wouldn't discount them.
So it's more about not being
it's
ageist and making assumptions about whether their power is real.
Obviously meant to get us all fucked up, to be suspect everyone and then get whiplash in the next couple chapters. It is so obvious that is why it's there. But I also think that it is completely and totally consistent with Pal's character to be like, you really think so? You really think that they're just not up to anything?
Right. Like, pay attention to the whole situation. Don't just let your emotions, color how you're interpreting what's going on.
But yeah, I loved that on a slow, careful reread, it is so fucking obvious that Corona is not a necromancer and that Palamedes knew what was going on at this point.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to miss it even on a reread.
Actually, I think specifically the way Pal responds to Corona in these chapters says to me that he knows and he pities her. And that's a really funny one, too. I think he knows that she's not a necromancer.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right, because why else would he say, oh, I'll take you down there? That could be his way of, like, trying to figure out if she is.
Fair enough. I have something just very dumb to say. Are you ready? One of my favorite movies of all time is Happy Death Day, and its sequel, Happy Death Day 2. They're time loop movies, time loop slasher thriller movies, and I highly recommend them. Perhaps we'll do one for a bonus episode. But basically, it's a murder mystery in the first one, and then in the second one, they make it kind of a dimensional drift so they can do the exact same thing again, but it's a different person who murdered this time. And I kind of feel like there's a part of me that would love to read Gideon the Ninth again and again, but with different people being the killer in each instance. And I kind of think that's almost like what Tamsin Muir did when she created the river bubble, was like almost just having fun in her head of like, what if I just wrote this story that was fun to write a different way?
Again and again and again. Well, she is a fanfic writer. Like,
exactly. So it all fits. So I do think it would be really fucking funny to have this book written again, but it is the fourth house that actually murdered everyone.
Don't tempt me. I might dabble in fanfic for the first time in my life.
Act 5. See you next time, my little nunlets. Well, it looks like we made it out alive for now, but don't worry, because there's more death to come. So we'll be back next week to run through chapters 23, 24, and 25. If you want to follow along with us, our reading calendar is available on our website at frontline5th.podbean.com, and you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok, which are linked in the show notes. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell your friends and give us a 5-star rating anywhere you can. And of course, if you didn't enjoy the podcast, feel free to lie. If you are dying for more content, you can get cool extras like extended games, movie reviews, and more by subscribing to our Patreon at patreon.com/frontline5th. A huge thank you to all of our existing subscribers. You are making us happier than Harrow in a pile of osseous material. And finally, if you have any fun theories you'd like to share with us, feel free to email us at frontline5th@gmail.com. And with that, I'll just remind you not to unlock any tombs or enter any doors without permission because, ghosts. Bye!
Frontline Fifth is a Locked Tomb podcast conceived by Marie Adamako and starring Marie Adamako, Hannah Grunwald, Brooke Anderson, and John Ryan. Our cover art was designed and created by Marie Adamako, who also edited this episode. Our fabulous music was composed and recorded by Blake Anderson. The Locked Tomb series is a completely dope-ass book series by Tamsin Muir, who does not know we exist and is in no way affiliated with this podcast. Whoop whoop!
Sweet. I will ride a turtle, so help me God.
Is riding turtles allowed?
I can't imagine that it would be.